Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's review I am beyond excited to be finally taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series Deluxe Class Dino. Finally, 10 years on, after Dark of the Moon did indeed hit the silver screen, we have our first official Deluxe Class Dino figure, and I myself, and I know many of you, could not be happier, and oh my goodness did Hasbro deliver with this particular release. Now of course, the figure is not 100% accurate to the movie as he does not sport the official Ferrari Alt mode that we did get in DOTM, and that is the main reason why we haven't as of yet seen a Dino figure, as I believe Hasbro had some issues in actually getting the license for the Ferrari, and I am also aware that many of you may be asking as to why Hasbro did not just hold out in order to strike a deal with Ferrari, and I personally believe that maybe it was just non-negotiable. I really don't think that Hasbro would have given us this figure if they had not tried absolutely everything in order to get the Ferrari license, but when you take into account just how good looking this figure is in both robot mode and vehicle mode, yes, despite the vehicle mode not being 100% faithful to the movie, I believe they've done a really nice job. The lack of an official Ferrari Alt mode is definitely a nitpick, as oh my goodness, as mentioned, this figure is remarkable. 10-year-old me would have certainly had an aneurysm, so without further ado, let's bring him in for a closer look. Starting off by taking a look here at the exceptional detail. I do apologise if the duration of this review does appear to be a gush fest. It's just that I am a die-hard Dark of the Moon fan and couldn't be any more happier than I already am to actually own an official Hasbro Dino figure. But nevertheless, taking a look here at the sculpt work, I believe they've done a terrific job. There is some exceptional sculpt work going on here. I love how the eyes, nose and even the mouth is clearly defined despite the design being slightly unusual. We also have got some terrific paintwork. All of the lining that we saw in the movie has been picked out in a super nice metallic silver, and they have gone the extra mile to finally paint the eyes, which too have also been detailed and sculpted incredibly well. As we turn our attention here to the torso, I do know there will be many of you that do have an issue with this being a faux piece. Personally, I don't necessarily have too much of an issue with it, as I really do believe that robot mode looks equally as good as it did on screen, and if they were to incorporate some of the vehicle mode components, we maybe wouldn't have been left with such a good figure. Now, the only issue that I do have with this is that from certain angles it does appear to be slightly too flat. However, if you have it at this angle or from a front-on perspective, it really doesn't look all that bad at all. You can see that we've got some incredible detail here for the lower torso. I love the gunmetal silver used, as well as the silver highlights here for where the headlights would be if this were the front of the Alt mode. I also love the attention to detail, such as these individually sculpted pieces here for the collarbones, very accurate to how he appeared in the movie. As we take a look here towards the door wings, personally I believe these to be slightly too large. In the film they were definitely a little smaller than this, but due to this not having a Ferrari Alt mode, I do believe that is why they are slightly more stylized when compared to what we actually got from the movie. But regardless, it is a minor nitpick for what is otherwise a pretty much flawless figure. As we turn our attention here to the arms, you can see how they've sculpted all of this wicked looking mechanical piston detailing for where the shoulder section would be. Very authentic, and it just adds that extra layer of realism and detail to a deluxe class release. As we take a look here towards the arms, we do have what is the front headlights of the actual vehicle mode here, which maybe I would have liked to have seen reversed so that this wasn't apparent from the front, but I really do like the sleek nature of this. Of course, Dino in the movie, from what we saw, was an incredibly sleek and agile character, and this figure, in my opinion, perfectly captures what we saw on screen. As we take a look here towards the bicep, you can see some really nice mechanical detail. The forearm too has got this gunmetal grey applied, and the fingers have been sculpted impeccably well. You can see some fantastic detail there. Of course, he does come with his arm blades, of which I'll go into more detail later on in the review. As we turn our attention here down to the legs, once again, I think they've perfectly captured the elegance of Dino/Mirage from the DOTM movie. I love how this armor plating here looks very flush along the thigh, and none of the vehicle mode components that are indeed visible on the robot mode appear bulky or misplaced. As we take a look here towards the interior, you can see some nice sculpt work there. Taking a look here at the lower leg, this has got to be one of my favourite aspects of the figure in general. I love all of the sculpt work here of these mechanical components strutting out, much like we saw in the movie. Honestly, I was not expecting them to go to this extent as far as sculpt work was concerned, but I absolutely love that they did. You can see that we've got some nice detail here on the sides. The foot design is incredible and perfectly captures what we saw in the movie. We've got some areas here which have been picked out in gunmetal, of course, to match his on-screen appearance, and overall I believe he looks terrific. As we spin around here to the back, considering that the majority of the robot mode does not actually hold any vehicle mode components, the only vehicle mode components that are indeed actually on the robot mode are the front headlights and then the rear wheels. The rest of the vehicle does indeed compact into this really seamless looking backpack. You can literally see that the backpack is nowhere near as obtrusive for what is essentially a very complex shell former. Everything does compact really nicely. I definitely got NPM Bumblebee vibes whilst converting this. I love how all of the panels do indeed compress really well with the figure, and it just helps to aid that very sleek design that we got from Dino from the movie. As far as articulation is concerned, we do get a ball joint here at the head which can look up and down to a considerable degree. We of course get left to right motion here, and we can also tilt the head side to side slightly. We have ball joints here at the arms which can rotate the full 360, although they are slightly hindered due to the nature of the design. We also get a hinge joint here out to the side, and if you utilize the transformation hinge joint, you can also bring the arms up even further, which really does help to accommodate some of the more dynamic poses that you may choose to get this figure in. We do get a rotation here at the bicep. It is unable to rotate the full 360 due to the nature of the transformation. Double jointed elbows here, which is fantastic on a Studio Series Deluxe figure. We get full 360 rotation here at the wrists. Unfortunately, no form of waist rotation, however that is due to the nature of the transformation, and that is something that I really would have loved to have seen Hasbro incorporate into this figure, as I'm pretty certain this will be the only live action Dino figure that we get from Hasbro for at least the foreseeable future. We do get ball joints here at the legs which can kick forwards that far as well as can kick back to that far. They can of course hinge out to the sides. Due to them being on ball joints, we do get a slight rotation here at the hip, although the main rotation is really just above the knee, so this can rotate the full 360. We only get 90-degree bend here at the knee, and then finally taking a look here at the foot, this can pivot forwards and backwards, but unfortunately is unable to rock side to side, which once again for such an agile character I would have loved to have seen at least ankle rock or pivot incorporated into this release, but there has really been no pose that we saw in the movie that I haven't been able to get out of this particular figure. Now, as far as accessories are concerned, Dino does come with of course his signature arm blades on the ground and stay there, and I think Hasbro have done a commendable job as far as the sculpt work is concerned. You can see we've got some really nice mechanical detail here. Unfortunately, they have merely just been cast out of a black plastic, so there are no silver highlights, and I do believe them to be on the smaller side compared to what we saw in the movie. However, due to their incorporation into the vehicle mode, I am able to see as to why they are perhaps on the smaller side, as if they were slightly larger, you wouldn't have been able to store them as seamlessly as you are indeed with this figure. So overall, as far as detail and sculpt work is concerned, I'm thoroughly impressed with this figure, and the articulation for the most part is really well done. Here for part 1 of the Dark of the Moon size comparisons, we have Dino compared to an array of Autobots. You can see that we've got him compared next to the original Dark of the Moon Cube, a character which I really hope Hasbro unveils for the next Studio Series movie line, as the original Dark of the Moon Deluxe, in my opinion, was one of the best deluxes from that line, so I could only imagine how well done this figure would look with 2021 technology. You can also see him compared next to Bumblebee and of course Ratchet, Ironhide and Optimus Prime, and honestly, if I had this set back in 2011, I would have been the happiest kid on the planet. And on a personal level, I'm just so thankful to Hasbro that they are indeed recognising the fan demand for Dino, and they have finally granted our wish despite it being 10 years on. I believe he scales great with these characters, and I believe they've done an incredible job in capturing his appearance from the movie. Here for part 2 of the Dark of the Moon Studio Series size comparisons, we have Dino compared next to Sideswipe, Shockwave, Leader Megatron, and of course Soundwave, who I believe actually kills Dino in the Dark of the Moon comic book, but you can once again see he scales really well with these characters, in particular the scaling between him and Sideswipe, as of course we do actually see these two characters standing side by side with each other in the movie, and once again I love how this looks. The Studio Series just in this shot alone has granted me 3 of my most wanted figures of all time: a Dino, a Leader Shockwave, and a Leader Class DOTM Megatron. I will more than likely hold the Studio Series line so dear to my heart for many years to come, as I am so grateful that this line does indeed exist. And here for the third and final part of DOTM Studio Series comparisons, at least here for Robot Mode, here we have Dino compared to what was then the new characters of the Dark of the Moon movie, the Wreckers, and I love how this looks. Once again, much like I said in part 2 of this comparison, the Studio Series truly has given me so many characters that I wanted growing up as a child, and here with this shot that is also evident, as we have Dino, we have an armoured deluxe Roadbuster, and a Leadfoot which is actually more readily available than the original DOTM Leadfoot. But as far as a size comparison is concerned, I think he fares really nicely with some of these other deluxes. Turning to transformation, to begin with, you're going to want to remove the wrist blades and just set those there off to the side. We can then turn our attention here to the doors, and you're going to actually want to take this panel here and completely flip this entire section out. Of course, repeat the same process here on the opposite side. You're then going to want to turn your attention here to the front, take the fire armor and actually pull this entire section out until it locks into place. Repeat the same process here on the opposite side. So just pull this out until it does click there into place. We can then take the lower knee joint, rotate this around so that the front is facing the back, and of course repeat the same process here on the opposite side. You'll then want to take the feet and just compress those there just like so. Take the faux chest, pull this entire assembly forwards, which will then allow you to begin working on this entire shell. So for this, you're going to want to disengage the butt flap. We can then take this section here, and you can see how we do have these two hinges. You're going to want to hinge this entire assembly all the way up. That will then allow you to completely extend all of this, and I would certainly take some caution whilst actually transforming this figure. As you can see, the main bulk of the shell has been created out of clear plastic, and whilst the plastic does feel quite high quality, if you do apply too much pressure, I'm pretty certain that it won't take much for you to unfortunately snap one of the hinges that does have the pin going through it. We're then going to want to turn our attention here to this section, flip this entire panel forwards, take the arms and recess those back, which will then allow you to rotate this here all the way around. He certainly has one of the more complex conversions for a Studio Series Deluxe. You're then going to want to hinge this section up, turn your attention to the underside now, and what I recommend doing is bringing in the wrist blades, and we do have two dedicated ports in the interior of the vehicle mode that you're just going to want to take these and port them there into place. Really nice weapon storage, and in my opinion is one of the best examples of seamless weapon storage that I have seen for a Transformer in a very long time. We're then going to want to take these sections, rotate these around, which will then allow you to hinge all of this up until it does snap into place. Of course, repeat the same process, so hinge this section here up. Utilizing the hinge joint as well as the ball joint, we can then align this up appropriately, and of course snap this section there securely into place. Turn your attention here to the interior. You're going to want to take the arms here, rotate these sections around, and of course repeat the same process here on this side. Take the wrists, rotate these around so that the back of the hands are indeed facing one another, as these two sections are going to tab into place. You can see how we have a tab and a slot there, and then a tab and slot on the opposite side. You're going to want to take these double hinge joints, and these are indeed going to ratchet into place just like so, so they will click and lock into their vehicle mode configurations, which will then allow you to take these two sections here, align these up appropriately, and of course snap them securely into place. Turn your attention here now down to the lower section of the vehicle mode. Now this is where things can get slightly complex. You're going to want to take the entire head assembly and essentially just collapse it along with the collarbone pieces. These here will come up and over and should slide into place like so. You'll then want to take the legs, hinge these sections here up and align them up appropriately. Of course, repeat the same process there on the opposite side, so just ensure that everything is aligned up correctly. You'll then want to take this rear plate here, snap that there into place, which will then allow you to align the rear wheels with this back section. Just snap all of this there securely into place, and I would actually recommend tabbing the doors in before you do anything with this rear plate. So take this here, and we do have a tiny port that will peg into this slot, so align this up appropriately, snap that into place, and then utilize these two tabs and essentially tuck them under all of this section. So just pop this here like so, come here to this side and repeat the exact same process. Snap that into place, come to this side and slide this up appropriately. You'll then want to turn your attention here to the rear section, take this, rotate this around, bring this down, rotate it once more, and you can see two tabs here and here that will indeed peg into two slots on the underside. So just align these up, snap that side into place, come here to this side, and of course repeat the exact same process, just ensuring that everything is tabbed in nice and securely. And with all that being said, here we have Studio Series Dino fully transformed up into his unlicensed yet very Ferrari-esque looking sports car mode. And so, as mentioned throughout this review, Hasbro were unable to obtain the actual license for Ferrari, whether that to be a disagreement with Mattel or perhaps Ferrari themselves. It led them to create a slightly more stylized looking sports car, although I have got to say, I believe they've done a commendable job with what they did have available to them. And for those of you who are diehard Dark of the Moon fans like myself, you'll know that this is actually very accurate to the Dark of the Moon game. Of course, Dino, or Mirage as he was called in the DOTM game, also never had a Ferrari alt mode, and it really did resemble something like this. So technically, this is accurate depending on what media you wish to base it upon, and I really don't have much of an issue with it at all. It to me more than resembles what we saw in the film, and as I'm more than likely going to keep him in robot mode, and as this is our first official Hasbro Dino, I can certainly look past this alt mode not being official by Ferrari. But nevertheless, taking a look here at the details, you can see that for the most most part, this is very sleek and elegant, much like his robot mode. I really love the detail that Hasbro did pack into this particular vehicle. You can see that the front headlights there have been sculpted really nicely and have of course had a silver paint application applied to them. The front section of the vehicle mode here has got some nice black venting detail, which too has been painted. As we spin around here to the side, you can see some smaller details such as the door handle, as well as some sculpting of the actual door itself. The rims of the vehicle, I believe, have come out really nicely and have all been picked out in a metallic silver. As we turn our attention here to the back of the vehicle, they have added some black lining in order to pick out some of the sharper details of the sculpt, and this entire region here at the back has been painted in a matte black, with this section being picked out in a slightly more glossy black. Unfortunately, we do have some hollow gaps, although it's certainly not the end of the world. And then as we take a look at him here from a bird's eye perspective, you can see how we do have this rear window. I do like how the sculpt work for the windows across the vehicle have come out, especially the front windscreen, and there are some smaller details such as the window wipers and of course the side view mirrors. Now, as far as colorization is concerned, I believe this too has also come out really nicely. Nowhere near as vibrant, of course, as what we got from the movie. Perhaps that was another attempt for them to distance themselves from the Ferrari license, although I believe the colour that we do have here looks really nice. There is a mix of cast red plastic and of course painted red plastic, and whilst there is a slight difference in the colour between the paint and the cast plastic, I believe that for the most part it looks really well done. You can see how the entire top assembly here has been painted, with this rear plate being the cast red, and there really isn't all that much difference at all, other than the fact that this here is slightly glossy. I also believe that the addition of a more smoky transparent plastic works a lot better than if this was a clear plastic, as it does help to hide some of the vehicle mode kibble, although you can clearly see Dino's blades stored within the alt mode. I think it's a really well done vehicle. If you do transform him 100% correctly, there is minimal clearance for him to actually roll along the ground, although he can do so with ease if you do get everything transformed correctly. You can see how the feet literally have a millimeter of clearance between where they are situated and where the wheels do end, so definitely ensure that you are tabbing everything to how the instructions do state. You can see that as far as actually storing is concerned, he is quite complex, but for the most part it is mainly to do with the entire shell, so in my opinion he's more of a complex shell former than your more traditional Transformers characters such as Sideswipe or even some of the Wreckers. So without further ado, let's bring out some comparisons. And here for a Dark of the Moon Autobot Extravaganza alt mode size comparison, Autobot victory! Autobot victory! Here I have Dino compared to pretty much the entire Autobot cast from the Transformers 3 movie, and as mentioned previously in the review, if I had this set of figures 10 years ago, I would have been the happiest kid on the planet, as this here is literally my childhood complete in one shot. You can see that as far as scaling is concerned, I think he scales really nicely with these characters, especially in regards to some of the other sports car vehicle modes. So here we have Dino and Bumblebee, and you can see that for the most part, Dino is a little bigger than Bumblebee. We'll bring in the original Dark of the Moon Wheeljack. You can see that considering this figure is 10 years old, there really isn't much of a difference as far as the scaling is concerned. Dino is more or less the exact same size as what we got with Q. Here he is here with the likes of Sideswipe, so a little bigger when compared to Sideswipe, and then we'll bring him in next to Ratchet. Once again, a little larger than Ratchet, which is of course not accurate to the movie, but I believe Ratchet is a little too small for a deluxe class. Here we have him next to Ironhide. You can see the scale there, I believe, works quite well. And then we'll bring in one final comparison. Let's bring in Dark of the Moon Topspin so you can see how these two deluxe figures fare. So overall, I believe he scales really well with these characters. I'm just glad that we do actually have a Dino in our collections, despite it not being, of course, a licensed Ferrari. I think he looks great among the shelves. And if you were to show this character to anyone and they had seen the DOTM movie, I'm pretty certain they would know exactly who this character was supposed to be. For a more in-depth size comparison, here we have Dino compared next to the Voyager class Ironhide, the Voyager class Sentinel Prime, who is unfortunately missing the side panels, as I have appeared to misplace them ever since I did my end of year ranking video. Of course, the scaling between these two characters is not accurate to the film, as the Rosenbauer fire truck should be enormous when compared to the likes of a Ferrari, but as far as robot mode scaling is concerned, I think it is pretty much spot on. Here we of course have him next to Dark of the Moon Optimus Prime with the trailer included, and I don't believe the scale here works too bad. Let's bring in Bumblebee. You can see how they look from a side-by-side perspective. Here he is with the original Dark of the Moon Q/Wheeljack. And as mentioned, I really don't believe the scale works too bad with those. And then we'll bring in Sideswipe, so you can see how those two very sleek and elegant looking vehicle modes look. And here for a Wrecker comparison, here we have him next to Roadbuster. Here we have him next to Leadfoot. And then finally, here we have him next to Topspin. So overall, a very substantial looking Deluxe here in his vehicle mode, and for the most part, I think he scales really well, especially in regards to the Deluxe comparisons. And so, some final thoughts. Overall, I believe this to be one of the greatest additions into the Transformers Studio Series line. As mentioned throughout this review, I am not only thoroughly impressed by this figure, but I'm also overjoyed that we actually have him into our collections, as I, like many collectors, had pretty much given up hope that we were going to get this character, especially as rumours began circulating that they could not get the license for the Ferrari. Many of us thought that perhaps they wouldn't even attempt to do a Dino, but nope, here we are happily proven wrong, and we have Dino in a deluxe form for one of the first live-action movie 2021 Studio Series waves, and I could not be happier. As far as robot mode is concerned, I believe this to be pretty much spot on to how he appeared in the movie. The head sculpt is fantastic, the sculpt work, especially concerning areas such as the collarbones, the arms, and the legs, I believe to be once again exceptional. The paintwork in the robot mode too, whilst is subtle, I believe is more than effective, and for an SS Deluxe, the articulation too is really well done. Of course, I would have loved to have seen at least ankle rocker pivot on this figure, and a waist rotation too would have been nice, as of course he was a very agile character in both the movie and of course the game, but the articulation that you are able to get out of the character does allow for some fantastic poses. The transformation is by far one of the more complex Studio Series Deluxes to date, despite it for the most part being a shell former, and I believe that the overall look of the alternate mode, whilst not 100% accurate to the movie, is a great compromise, and whilst is a little more stylistic when compared to his actual vehicle mode, I believe still captures the essence of what we saw from the film, and if you are going by DOTM game accuracy, it's pretty much spot on. So overall, if you are a Bayformer fan, you love the Michael Bay movies and of course the Studio Series, Dino is by far one of the characters that I would highly recommend. In my opinion, he is one of the most, if not the most, anticipated figure out of this line overall, and I'm really hoping that perhaps they will re-release this character, maybe with the grappling hooks which we see him use on the highway in order to take down the Dreads. I really hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, please do let me know down in the comment section below. Also be sure to let me know on what you think of the character and the figure itself, and whether or not you will be adding him to your collection. I thank you all for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.